Green, okay. So as Linda said, I'm Kimberly Ertl, and many of you know me already. And I am a Chinese medicine practitioner, so I come to the idea of spring and renewal and rebirth with that philosophy in mind. So that's what I'm going to quickly, I know when I say theory, people kind of right away, their eyes glaze over a little bit, but if we understand why I'm going to then teach you some of the strategies for spring, we can't get there without knowing the reasoning behind it. So very, very quickly, in Chinese medicine, the naturalists looked to the nature outside of themselves and determined as in nature, so within human bodies, right? That physiology would be prescribed by the laws of nature. So initially, there was nothing. There was the void, the emptiness. And out of the emptiness came the two, which is yin and yang, which we've all heard of before and even seen that symbol of the sort of two fishes, right? And then within that, so that was one paradigm under which you can group all in nature under the concept of yin and yang, everything. But to make it more specific.
Do you have a phone on you? It might be.
You know what? It's right here. I was setting my timer so that I wouldn't go over, but I'll stop.
It might. Well, no. It might just the wireless of the phone might be interfering. So push it farther away.
Push it farther away. Okay. Keep my. Yes. Okay. So they further divided yin and yang into 5 elements. And the 5-element cycle actually starts in spring with wood. So it's wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And that's the cycle we go through every year. Wood being spring, fire being summer, then earth being sort of that harvest season between summer and fall, metal is fall, and water is winter. And this nature of wood is one big, huge umbrella under which so many things behave with a wood-like nature, including spring. And the nature of wood is very much this circular up and out and evolving, sort of constantly evolving. This pressure to evolve, in fact. And other than that upward of yang is the idea that it is spring, but it's also associated in the body physiologically with the 2 organs, liver and gallbladder. It's also associated with the emotion of anger, and we're going to get into that a little bit about how to harness even that energy. And it's associated, of course, with the color green as new things are sprouting out of the ground, and with our vision. Including the vision of the world around us, our internal vision of ourselves, and our ability to envision our future. So all of those have that upward momentum of the yang energy of spring. So this energy, I've been talking a lot about this in the clinic just the last couple weeks. If we think about what came before, which is water, or in other words, like still waters run deep, right? Winter time, that seed that's in the ground, that is sitting there cold, but harness all this potential inside there, all this energy that's ready and stored and just sort of waiting. And now the ground starts to warm up, the sun starts to shine, and that potential energy becomes kinetic energy, right? It wants to move. There's friction there. And so people start feeling irritable and even a little angry and a little bit unsettled, because it's this kinetic energy, this friction of wanting us to evolve one step further, of wanting us to grow in a new direction, something that we've never maybe done before. It's the time now to start envisioning that. And if we ignore it, if we suppress it, then that really becomes anger. That's when we push it down and it becomes indigestible, right? And sort of sits there as a pit and or upwardly flares up in violent outbursts rather than a sort of harnessed state of energy. So that seed that's sitting there and the warmth comes and there's this kinetic push, but the seed is still very much both being and becoming at the same time, right? So the seed that is the acorn that becomes the oak, at what point does it change from an acorn to an oak? It is always being the acorn and the oak at one time. So we don't completely let go of anything that's come before, but we continue to grow and evolve toward, actually, the ancients would say, toward heaven, toward our true purpose, which is upward toward heaven, with the eye toward our divine goal or our divine purpose on earth. And so physiologically, the liver and the gallbladder are very much part of that upward motion. The liver is known to be the general who sort of gets all the troops together and harnesses them and says, this is what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to go forward. And you can see how that anger energy, that friction energy is perfect for that, right? And the free flow of that energy, the liver governs the free flow of that energy. So if we ignore that, we sort of, the liver gets very uncomfortable. It doesn't like stagnation. It doesn't like just inertia. So the liver is harnessing that upward motion and marshaling, sort of making the plans of the best way forward. And its paraorgan is the gallbladder. And the gallbladder is out there making the decisions that impact the liver's plans. So we decide we're going to move, which is the first action of spring to help us stay healthy. And we decide, okay, the liver says, yes, we need to move to feel good. And the gallbladder says, well, but we could swim, or we could walk, or we could do yoga. And which one should we do? Well, let's gather some data. Okay, liver, here's the decision. We're going to actually swim 2 times a week. And the liver says, okay, that sounds good. As long as my plan is being enacted, I'm happy. So the liver, or the gallbladder, serves that very important purpose of making a decision. So it also reflects to us the importance of having a plan, but also putting in some detail behind that plan. Because a plan, I often have patients who are trying to lose weight and they say, well, I'm just going to eat better. That's not a plan, right? The gallbladder needs to jump in and say, okay, what does that look like, right? So we have a vision or we have a plan, we've envisioned it, but we need to make the decisions that get us to the plan. Okay, so that's how it kind of comes in mentally, emotionally, maybe even spiritually. And how can we, again, harness this? Number one thing is to move. And so I do want to share with you a particular Qigong. And Linda, I'm going to give you a link that you can send out to a person who has a YouTube video of this particular Qigong movement. So you can review it in the future, but also because he's a better teacher than I am. And if you Googled 5-element Qigong or looked up on 5-element Qigong on YouTube, you would get a number of different forms. And this happens to be the form that I learned in school. So it's the one I feel most comfortable teaching. And it's just the wood element that we're going to practice today. But of course, there are 5 of them. So this man has links to the other 4 that you could also learn those styles or those forms. I think it's helpful to do the wood form in the wood time of year. It's also helpful maybe to do water and fire because wood sits right in the middle of those 2. So we're transitioning from that inward reflection little seed to the movement, the upward movement, to fire, which is that creative spark that really allows us to actuate our potential. So we'll start, though, with the wood one today, and then you can always review online and look at his other videos, okay? And then, of course, if you have time to do all 5, it's even better, right? So what we're going to do, if you're comfortable standing and standing for a bit of time, then stand. If you're not comfortable standing, this can be done, all of these, the 5-element form can be done sitting as well, wherever you are most stable and comfortable. Okay, and we're going to just take our feet a little bit wider than our hip bones. So if you put your hands right on the hip points that you feel at the front of your body, and you just sort of point downward, and your feet are going to be just a little outside of that. It doesn't have to be a lot. And you're going to bend your knees. So if liver loves free flow, if we're locked up, we're not free flowing. Most of the movement's going to be with, we do want to have a little relaxation and bending in our knees. I'm wondering if I'm still too close. Okay, so we're relaxed and not locked out. And then, actually, this is going to get hard. I might need you to hold this. Oh, yeah, or use the... Do I just click it in there? Perfect. Okay. There, I think that's good. Okay. Yeah? Can you still hear me? Scoot more this way. Ed is telling me I'm out of the frame. Okay. Okay. So we've got our legs apart. Our knees are slightly bent. And then we're just going to bring our hands right here to our center, just to kind of gather ourselves for a moment first. And even take a nice deep breath. Okay. And so liver, the idea is that we're going to actually be massaging the liver and the digestive organs. So we're going to raise one hand up sort of to our heart with our hand pointing outward toward the front, toward the future. And the other hand is going to come back along our side. And we're going to move simultaneously, pushing that hand out and drawing your elbow back with your arm is almost resting on the hip. This is something that it's important if you have any spinal issues. You don't need to do a really big twist. There is going to be a twisting motion. So do a simple, whatever is most comfortable. It can be a very slight movement and still get that twist in there. Or it can be really big. The guy who you'll see in the video, he goes all the way back. But, you know, it doesn't have to be that big to still get a little movement in the torso. So this hand is coming out. The other hand, the bottom hand, is coming back. And we're pulling kind of our whole torso, including a little bit our hip, back towards one side. And then we come back in and we turn our hands and swap them and push the other hand out and forward. With mostly, our torso is turned, our arm is forward. And then we just can kind of get a little bounce and pull and push. Very nice little internal massage going on, wringing out that stagnant energy. And this all nice about this bounce in our legs is, you know, the thigh muscles, the glute muscles, these are the biggest muscles in our body. So if we're moving them in this way, it's kind of pumping energy and blood through our whole system. But again, if we're seated, we can do the same kind of upward movement without having to rely on our legs to hold us up. And then if we think about also the springtime being about vision, when that arm comes out, I'm looking all the way past Ed to those beautiful green trees behind him. And then when my hand comes back in, and then I push my vision again out and bring it back in. So those muscles behind the eyes that help us see far and see near and see far and see near also get a little bit of exercise, right, with this motion. So that's it. It's pretty simple. And then in terms of some other, take it again. In terms of a few other little things you can do to harness this spring energy, I'm going to just find the right page. Holding everything down was a great idea for some things. There we go. No, I got it. Thank you. So, yes, movement. And it doesn't have to be gong. Movement can be springtime hikes, right? It can be yoga class. It can be a walk around the block after dinner. Whatever works well for you, just moving is good at this time of year. The other few things we can do that harness that same outward evolutionary energy, one of them is to sort of remove any chaos from your home environment. Things that have been sitting around, spring cleaning, basically, right? Things that have been sitting around gathering dust or stagnating over the winter, it's time to clear them out so that we have space to actually begin to rest our and envision in a broader way, right? The other things that you can do, don't blow away. So wind is the of spring as well, the element that is associated with wood. And wind can be that flaring up of energy, right? And it can be sort of a nuisance as well. Okay. So, so we're clearing space to allow new things. And then in terms of diet and lifestyle, as without, so within again, at this time, from a historical perspective, the larders were empty. Right? So we weren't eating heavy, rich foods that we had stored away for winter. We're sort of out, we would be out gathering the freshness of spring, right? The little baby shoots, baby arugula and baby spinach and sprouts, right? And mushrooms, these kinds of things that are sprouting up right now are really healthy for us to incorporate in our diet and avoiding those really rich, fatty, high fatty foods that we would have had for winter to get us through the cold, right? Also, letting go, so that anger piece, letting go of old resentments, things that are no longer serving us. This helps the liver to flow freely. Resentment as I said, can't be digested. It just sort of sits as a pit. So there are lots of different techniques people can use, including writing a letter or writing down something about forgiving and then burning it or letting it flow down a stream or some way getting rid of some of those old things and starting fresh. And then taking a risk and really trying something new. So we have this potential. What is our potential? And again, it can be, think of it in ways of mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. Where is there a point in your life that you want to evolve and grow and take a risk and be playful with it and have fun with it? And be creative. And that will sort of set you up for the creative spark that's coming with the fire element in just a couple months. Okay, so I think, there was a line today in the readings, but that was about this sort of same idea of pushing through the old and into the new. And here we are in spring, and the opportunities are boundless for the ways that we can grow. And all I can say is I really encourage you to explore them. And that will truly keep you healthier especially as we kind of wake up from this year-long I've been saying the year-long nightmare that we've been living. So, to really wake up from that and start fresh, there are many ways in which this spring in particular is a time to do that. So thank you for all being here. Yeah, and if anybody has questions, I'll be happy, or want to go through the form, I'll be happy to do that too.